That last talk was amazing.
Yeah, right.
The card on the table today, good poetry makes the universe admit a secret. Now, I did my talk last night at 4 o'clock in the morning. Some of you were there. And I woke up with one line. I didn't even know why, but I woke up with that line. And the line I woke up with is, have you ever written a poem with words instead of your heart? And have you watched it fall apart? Wow, where am I going to use that? Good poetry. So, I'm going to take you on a journey as well, since it's a time for reflection, and hopefully connection and hopefully inspiration all tied together. I love the theme, it's a wonderful theme. I want to pick up first on what Ken said last night when he asked if we do treatment. I said yes. And do you treatment every day? Yes. Do you treatment more than once? Yes. I began to think my arm was a reflex. I had to treat them all the time. But I also realized at the end of the day, sometimes I like a scotch and soda. Sometimes it's just hard to have treatment work because somehow that mind that's always working, I call it, after last night's talk, the underbelly of consciousness. We all have one. It's the one that worries all the time. What if you don't make it to the airport in time? What if when you get here, the room is already taken? What if you continue to gain weight and you're not going to overcome your anorexia like we thought? That mirror exercise yesterday was something else, I'll tell you. When I stand in front of the mirror, I don't feel the divine. I do feel a sense of wonder, like I wonder what else is going to go wrong. Some of the parts still work, some don't work so well. There's no great joy in this. There's, oh, damn, I thought I was smaller than that. You know? I thought I was doing better. I cut back on the pastries. So, I want to take you on a journey, and the purpose of the journey is to show you not only a piece of my life, but ministry and how it works in many different areas. I have 3 ministries, really. The first ministry I have is with my wife, Judith Churchman, who I could just listen to by the hour, even if she didn't say anything that made sense, because she has a beautiful voice. And we share a ministry in West Palm Beach. Get it right. I almost know where I am. We have a ministry there. My second ministry, of course, is Murphy, my dog. And I write for him. And I want to introduce Murphy. I'm going to see if I can find him here. He's here. Murphy goes everywhere. And my third ministry is, of course, the hospital. I work 20 hours a week in a hospital. And I work 20 hours a week in a hospital, not because I need to or I have to, but I want to. And the reason for that is September 9th, 2014, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when normally people would be sleeping, I heard a very loud voice. And the voice said, "Get up!" And I immediately sat up. You do that when you're alone in the room when you hear a loud voice. Especially if in your history you were a mental health counselor who doesn't normally hear voices. And as I sat up, I noticed that my arm hit the wall next to the bed, but I didn't feel it. And I went to move my arm, and it was no longer my arm. It was an arm suspended with no ability to move. I think I might have said something like, "Oh shucks," or "Oh my goodness." Or I might have said, "Oh shit. This is not a good sign." Remember, I've worked in hospitals for 50 years. So I got up and got dressed as best I could, with one arm, one hand. Went into the bedroom where normally I sleep, but I was sleeping in a spare room in a mattress on the floor because my wife a week before had broken her arm and had it in a cast and took up the entire bed. So I at that point said to honey, I need to go to the hospital. And at that point I realized my speech was slurred and I sounded like I was drunk. On the way to the hospital, well, she said, "I'll call an ambulance." I said, "No, we'll take the Lincoln." I had bought her a Lincoln Town car. And I thought it would be a nice car to go to the hospital in. So she drove the Lincoln Town car, and on the way there, I said, "You need to join Harmony.com. This doesn't look good." When I got to the hospital, I'm trying to explain to the registrar, because I wasn't smart enough to go by ambulance, that I'm having a stroke, and she thought I was drunk. And then someone who heard the word stroke came out, and wheeled me into the emergency room. And as I was going into the emergency room, panic set in, because I used to work in the emergency room. I was the person who cleared people who had mental illnesses when they came to the emergency room. I'm a real tall person. I actually am 6'4", but I have what's called discrete height. You can't see it. And when I would walk into the emergency room at 6'4", I was tall. When I came into the emergency room in a wheelchair, I wasn't very tall. I was really short. The doc walked by, and the person attending me said, "Doc, you gotta stop. This man's having a stroke," which is the first time I heard those words. And I was short, and I thought I might be short on life. I looked around and I thought, this is not good. Now this is where I want to change the story just a little bit. I want you to imagine that your center is an emergency room. I want you to imagine that your center is an intensive care unit. And I want you to imagine that the people coming to the hospital or to your center are in many ways broken and they can't talk about. And it hurts. It hurts a lot. So when people come to your center, they act like everything is okay, and they'll even give you money. And they'll support you. But what they won't tell you is how badly broken they are, how much they hurt, how much pain they have, how often they've heard the voice that Ken talked about yesterday telling them they can't do anything, that nothing's ever going to work for them, and how they tamp it down. And they cover it with a veneer, and then they polish the veneer. And they even ask you to help them polish the veneer. In fact, if everything goes well, eventually you could believe in their veneer. And then there's no hope at all for them. So I was in the emergency room and the nurse came in and she said, "I'm going to take your blood pressure." And she looked at my armband. She said, "Are you Mr. Luckin?" And she's talking to my arm, the one that is not without feeling. I said, "Look at me." So she looked at me and she said, "What?" I said, "What's your name?" And she told me her name. I said, "Are you married?" "You're having a stroke and you're hitting on me?" She said, "No." She said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Tell me a little bit about you. Where'd you go to school?" Slurred speech, but she told me where she went to school, and I said, "That's great." She said, "Why are you asking me these questions?" I said, "You see, because I'm in the hospital here, and I might die tonight. And if I die tonight, like the person next to me who had a hemorrhagic stroke just before I got there, I want to die with my family, and you're my family. Did you know that as ministers, as practitioners, you are people's family, in some cases their only family. And they're afraid they're going to die there. It's a really big deal." And so I told her that, and the word got around pretty quickly that I was not like the other patients. So even when I had a stroke, I'm going to be a little different. I'm going to have a leadership role. So then they sent me to intensive care, which is interesting. Because again, I think of the hospital as an intensive care. Or it is intensive care. The centers that we take care of as intensive care.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing about an intensive care unit. There's lots of machines. There's lots of things to take care of. There's lots of things that need tending to. And sometimes what happens when you're in the intensive care, emphasis on care, unit, you are anonymous and not noticed. How could that happen? How could that happen in a center where we're the minister? And a person could come in for intensive care and not be noticed, and not be seen, and leave with the same pain and then not come back. Or maybe leave with an attitude, and because of the attitude, we're glad to have them gone. Because we only want people like us. You know how that works. People that agree with us. Because in some cases, our ministries are all about being liked, not about being honest and being real. We get caught in that trap. And so when people don't seem to like us, we don't recognize that dislike sometimes comes out of pain and insulation and protection. But it does. So I'm in the intensive care unit. It's 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning or some late hour, and I should be sleeping, except it's hard to sleep when there's beep, 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 code blue, room 4, which means somebody's having a heart attack and dying. But the nurses were in the background. They were having a conversation. I heard them. One of the nurses was talking to the other nurse about sleeping with one of the doctors. That's pretty interesting stuff. Just about the time I was going to find out which doctor, I knew it wasn't my neurologist and nobody would sleep with him. Just about the time I was going to find out which doctor, they stepped out of range. I said, you know, if you're going to talk like that at 2 o'clock in the morning, keep me awake, keep me in the loop. I need to know. So what's interesting is, in this intensive care unit, in this Center for Spiritual Living, there's all kinds of conversations, some of which we know about, some of which we don't. I had a person come into our spiritual living center, and they were living spiritually. And they were so spiritual, I could see it, you could feel it, it was dripping off of them, until they got to their seat, and it was taken. By somebody not so spiritual. Apparently not very intuitive, not aware. This seat has been paid for week after week, with blood and sweat and tears. This person donated almost as much money as it cost for a Starbucks coffee. Every week. Not just so much, every week. They'd send in their $3 for that seat if they needed to. See, we're in ministry because we want to help people see they're good. We want to help people see how powerful and wonderful they are. And their job is to tell us that we're not all that great. That we're trying, we keep at it, maybe we'll get it right. It's an interesting kind of paradox if you think about it. In fact, ministry is a paradox. Because you work as hard as you possibly can to do the most you possibly can, and you find out that you're just scratching the surface. And I love what Cat Stevens said in one of his songs. I'm just a zero. Whatever you think of me, I'm really quite a bit less. And we work sometimes very hard at being liked and having people feel good about us, rather than us feeling good about what we do and how we are in the world. So I want to carry the story a little bit further. I got out of that intensive care, but actually not without going to all of the rooms where patients were that were having strokes and talking to them and telling them they could overcome this. We can do treatment. What do you mean we can do treatment? We can do kind of prayer. You know what prayer is? Oh, I know what prayer is. I said, well, can we do some prayer for you? Well, sure. What qualifies you to do prayer? You're wearing hospital socks and a robe. I said, let's just stop with the robe. I got it buttoned. I said, we can do prayer and we can have a success here. And he said, how do you know we can have a success? I said, I just had a stroke. Really? When did you have a stroke? About 11 hours ago. 11 hours ago, and you're in my room wanting to do a treatment for strokes? I said, I'm not hanging around. They tell me I could have another one in the next 6 months. We're going to get this one handled for you and me. We're going to work as a team, okay? I go to the hospital now every day for 4 hours, and I spend time talking to people who are having strokes and heart attacks, people that are in trouble and worried. I greet people at the door when they come in sometimes. I can be any number of places in the hospital. One day, not long ago, and I love this story, that's why I'm going to tell it. I happened to be in the lobby, the outpatient lobby, 350 pound or more, black woman, beautifully dressed, tries to get out of her car. And she gets out of her car, and it's not easy to get out of her car. She gets out of her car and she's trying to get towards the outpatient, and I saw her, so I grabbed a wheelchair and I ran out with it and I put it under her. She said, what are you doing? I said, looks like you could use a little bit of help. She said, oh my Lord, I could use some help. How, you don't do this kind of thing, do you? And I said, I do today. She said, that's amazing. But I sensed in her voice a kind of guilt, a kind of embarrassment. You know, I shouldn't need this much. You shouldn't have to do this for me. I picked up on that and I said, you know what? She said, why did you do this? I said, do you like macaroni and cheese? She said, I love it. I said, I was kind of hoping if I brought you in a wheelchair, one day you'd come back with some macaroni and cheese for me. I said, I could do that. She said, Jesus is working through you. And I said, and hopefully going to bring me some macaroni and cheese. So, you don't notice sometimes the impact you have on people.
That's right.
5 days later, of course, she also went to the radiation department to have radiation for cancer. And she told everybody in the radiation department about how I'd come out and helped her. Nobody had ever done that for her before. And part of the reason I mentioned that she's a black woman is one thing I love about 70% of the women who come to our hospital are black. And they're not afraid to talk. And they're not afraid to be real. And they're not afraid to get excited. And I love that. I had no idea that that would come through like it does, and it just lights my life. And so, 5 days later, she comes back and she said, I was talking to my girlfriend about you and what you did, bringing that wheelchair out to me. She said, nobody's ever done that before. And I told her, I'm going to bring you some macaroni and cheese. She said, has he got a wife? She said, I don't know. She said, you better ask. Because if he's got a wife and you're bringing in macaroni and cheese, that could cause some problems. She said, you got a wife? I said, I sure do. I said, and my wife won't make macaroni and cheese. You want to bring some macaroni and cheese? Bring enough for two and I'll let her watch me eat it twice. She said, I can do that. I'm going to do that. She said, why are you here? I said, can you keep a secret? I think so. I said, I'm a minister. She said, praise Jesus. I said, yes, indeed. I said, I'm a minister, and this is my ministry incognito. This is the ministry where nobody knows I'm a minister. In fact, somebody came in a while back and they said, what do you do here? I said, I'm working here. And I said, is this like a job? And I said, no, it's an early release program. Once I told somebody that I was in a witness protection program, and there was no way to be more anonymous than to work in a hospital. Well, we care about everybody, sort of, especially if they're insured. See, these little things that you do, that's what ministry really is. Ministry is reaching into the heart, your heart, and opening it up and saying, what do you feel? And knowing, without having to know why, that something's going on with somebody that you can tend to.
Yes.
It's not having the right quote, although I love quotes because I write a lot of them. It's not having the answer. It's not even necessarily knowing the question right away. It's sort of hanging out with and into the presence of another person. See, ministry is a tough thing because you got to know a lot to get to be a minister, and then you got to forget it all as soon as you get to talk to somebody. You got to be like Columbo. And ask questions and just be dumb. And let the person be smart. We get caught up in having to be smart because we're afraid if we're not smart enough, we won't keep our job. In some cases. We're afraid if we're not liked enough, we won't keep the favor of the board. That in some cases runs the church. Some cases into the ground. Some cases lifts it up. But in all cases needs you to be present as you, even if they don't know it.
That's right.
So I'll take you on to the next step. Now, first we did the reflection. We've done some connection. Now I want to do some inspiration. In my dream, while I was in intensive care, I had a hero's dream. It was an interesting dream, a lucid dream. In my hero's dream, I got a definition of a hero. A hero is not the smartest, brightest, or necessarily tallest, even though that is one of my virtues. Not the brightest, smartest, or tallest person, but the person who is in the position at the time where a great need is felt, who says yes. And who says yes knowing that all that they know is going to be challenged. That their brilliance will be not enough. They're going to have to exceed it. In other words, all the education and everything you've got is just going to leave you a little short and have to open you up to learning more and saying yes. Now in the hospital, I see that all the time. I see professionals who jump on board and do everything they possibly can, and the patient dies. They have to learn more. They have to get better at what they do. In ministry, I see ministers who do everything they can, and then they find out they have to learn more. They have to be awakened to more, to be able to do what it was they thought they already knew how to do. It's a learning, constant learning process. Yesterday when I heard the words, I am deconstructing myself, I thought, wow, what a courageous thing to do, to deconstruct yourself, as opposed to building yourself up or making yourself seem like more. What a big thing that is to do. So in this hero's journey, what I want you to pay attention to is that you're all heroes. You're heroes because you said yes. You didn't have to say yes. And on your hero's journey, when you say yes, you get to have it all. You get to be it. You get to be tagged. And it ain't necessarily fun. But now I want to take you on the journey in my dream. In my dream, there were two characters. The first character was much better looking than me. Certainly as tall as me, if not taller. And had been the designated hero. There was another person on the journey too, and that was the hero's partner, the hero's buddy. You've all seen these movies where the hero has a buddy. And the first day of my hero's journey, the hero runs into spiders. Not fun. And he gets bitten. And it gets pretty inflamed. And that night he's looking at the bite and he says, well, you know, this is going to get better, plus I got the other arm. And the buddy says, are you kidding me? This is the craziest thing we've ever done. This is insane. And the next day, they run into the alligators. And they get chased, and it's just horrible. And the hero says, we made it. We learned how to deal with alligators. Thank God none of you ever have any alligators in your ministry. And the buddy said, this is the stupidest, craziest thing we've ever done. What is wrong with us? And this goes on for 3 or 4 days. Every day is the same thing. Something good happens or something bad happens, but the hero says, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm learning more things. And the buddy says, oh yes, but it's some kind of a cost. At the end of the journey, after the phone rings, the hero usually gets the princess, the best looking princess, of course, of all time. And the buddy gets a lesser position. That was my dream. Here was my great awakening, my great epiphany. They're both on the same journey. It's a hero's journey. One, however, is on the hero's journey, and the other is on the victim's journey. And I noticed for myself that every day, 100 times a day, I get to choose if I'm on the hero's journey or the victim's journey. I get to decide, is it a hero? Am I a hero or am I a victim? When the man came in, threw down his keys on the desk, and I happened to be at the desk that day, I said, I need a damn pass to room 347. Can you do that? I was quickly willing to be a victim. I felt small. I felt upset. I felt like, why do I even bother doing this? And then I said, what would a hero do? I took my keys out, threw them on the table. I said, we got that taken care of. I'm going to let you go up to the room. You know why? This happened to be another black man. He said, because I'm black? I said, no. Because you got the same haircut I got, it looks really good. And he looked at me, and he smiled, took the pass. He came back. He said, you got a couple minutes? I said, sure. He said, my dad's got cancer. My mom had a heart attack. Things are not good. Can we talk? We talked for 45 minutes about life, about the conditions of life and the things that were going on in his life. And I noticed that the level of his anger and frustration that seemed to be directed at not liking me was not liking his life, not liking what had happened to him. not liking the pain that he was in. And if I hadn't been careful, I would have been in that same pain, because I had been told by somebody else at the desk that day, "Oh, don't talk to him, he's miserable. You know, he's antagonistic, he wants to fight." No, he's fighting for his life, and he wants a life.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah, he really does. We're all fighting for a life behind the scenes. We're all asking for something we've never seen or never had and may never get. We're all looking for something bigger in our life than we've ever had an experience with. And sometimes we get beat down to the point where we're too afraid to even ask for it out loud. We even get to the point where we're afraid to ask for it inside as well. And we kind of do a timeout. We have what I call a near-life experience. I'm not going to have the real thing and wait till I retire. 6 months after I retire, I'll probably die. Because I've been having a near-life experience for so long, I won't know what to do with a real-life experience. So I put my real life on hold. We're here to have an exceptional, amazing, real, and powerful life.
Yes.
We're not here for anything less. We have to own that. I'm going to go someplace I haven't gone before. I hadn't even thought about going, but I watched Ken Gordon last night, and I watched Ken Gordon probably at least 10 or 15 times talk. And I've watched him sit in a board meeting, and I watched him try to guide the board meeting. I watched him listen. I watched him work together with the two organizations as they attempted to become one. And here's the thing that really struck me. He never lost an ounce of passion. He never lost an ounce of caring. He never lost an ounce of vision. See, how successful he was on any given day means very little to me. How he never lost any of that is what I look for, and what you look for, and what the people in your center look for. That you get up every day and you care enough to keep on caring, even when it seems like there's no way in hell this could possibly work. And I don't know Ken's inner conversation. I suspect it's a little like mine. Oh shit, not another one. This is probably not going to work. Thank God I've got a wonderful and amazing wife. Because I got one of those too. But at the same time, this whole thing that we have done together cannot be done, okay? Not possible. Except it's happening. People come to your center to be uplifted, to be encouraged, to be empowered, and hopefully to read Murphy's Dogma in the back of the Science of Man magazine. Because it's important. I took up that column, just so you know before I close, I took up that column, or decided to write that column, because I thought Murphy can say things I can't say. He can even talk about me. He can talk about us. He can talk about the world. I thought, what a great position to be in. What I hadn't thought is that Murphy would get more fan mail than I do. It's true, he does.
Get used to it.
Thank you, I think. Okay. So here, I'm going to give you one last thing you can all do, okay? You don't have to. Get a hold of DeVores. It's a book publisher. Email them. And ask them when Mystic Bones is going to be produced. Okay? Mystic Bones is the book that they've had now for 2 months, that they're sitting on, that I want published. Just email them and say, this book that Bob wrote, what are you going to do with it? I'll probably get in trouble for having done this. I'm having fun. Why not? You see, the bottom line is, do everything you can in favor of the life that supports you,
right.
Your dreams, and your vision. And enroll as many people as you can. And why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do treatment for the best possible outcome? And I cannot think of a more mighty force than all of you treating for the publication of my book. The book is called Mystic Bones, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much.